it is requesting kind of support from the global south after not putting enough money into fighting climate change, not showing sufficient solidarity over providing vaccines during the pandemic, for instance. Does the West need to look at itself and think more about solidarity being a two-way street?
I would even take it further. We've had a raging war in DRC. We've had a raging war in Somalia. We have challenges in Ethiopia. We have issues in South Sudan. And we are all alone. Kenya, for example, we've had to put our resources, Kenyan resources, in deploying troops in DRC. We are currently hosting discussions to support the peace process in Ethiopia. We are working round the clock to see what we can do supporting training of public officials, administration officials, teachers for Somalia, using our own public resources. Part of the conversation I was having with the President of Germany today is the drawdown, the walk away, so to speak, of EU from the situation in Somalia, and the rest of it. So when it is our issues, it is our issues. When it is other people's issues, it's global issues.
This is the Mr. Jaishankar, the Indian foreign minister's quotation. Is that who you're quoting here? Yeah.
So I think we need to have a fair conversation. When you talk about climate change, we've said this many times that we are bearing the biggest brunt of climate change with loss of diversity, huge droughts. Kenya is experiencing 4 years of continuous drought, severe drought. We've lost 2.5 million heads of livestock. We have lost livelihoods. Yet the conversation around climate change is still sterile. We are having difficulty persuading the globe, especially the global north, on loss and damage. These are not phantom stories. Loss and damage is a reality. And while we respect that we need to play our role in what the war and to speak about the war in the middle of Europe between what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, surely we need to have a much more candid conversation about the effects of climate change, about debt that is crippling many countries in the global south because of the unfair, almost let me say deliberate, international financial system that is rigged against the global south, where we pay 50 times more interest to access development resources than our compatriots, because we are priced out of resources by risk. Everybody believes investing, putting your resources in the global south is risky. So we end up paying inordinate. And that's the conversation we need to have. And hopefully we will be able to push this conversation to the center of global debate on how do we move into the future. We are facing, as humanity, not as the global south, we are facing as humanity an existential threat because of the effects of 400 years of exploiting fossil fuels recklessly. The African continent is coming with a solution, stopping financing fossil fuel exploration and exploitation. It's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because it has to stop. Otherwise, this globe is going to burn with all of us in there. Let me give you an example. We're discussing drought today in Kenya. The president of Germany was telling me about drought in Germany. So climate change has no boundaries. There is no climate change for the global south. There is no climate change for the global north. And those of us from the global south are saying, we are coming to the table with our assets. We have the largest resources of renewable energy. We have the largest natural resources. We have the largest, maybe 65% of the world's arable uncultivated land. We have the largest population, young, energetic, innovative. These are resources that we are coming to the table and saying, we need to have a conversation about how do we access development financing? How do we access fair, consideration? How do we de-risk investments in these resources so that we can use renewable green energy to drive the development of the world going into the future? Not the development of Africa alone, not the development of the global south. Let me say this with absolute clarity. We are at a crossroads. Either we choose to continue the exploitation of fossil fuels and we accelerate ourselves to climate hell, or we finance the renewable green energy in the global south and save the world.
Now, you're here in Germany partly trying to drum up investment into Kenya. So tell us a little bit about your thinking on that. I mean, China has been a very important investor in Kenya and also in the wider region in recent years, pouring in money. Are you now trying to kind of diversify your sources of investment? Do you think that Kenya has become, for example, a bit too dependent on money coming in from China?
Well, we're here because we have a 60-year-old relationship with Germany. It's always been there, and we have developed our relationship, and it's been on a trajectory of growth, whether we are talking about investments in our geothermal resources, in the water, in health, and it has nothing to do with what we do with others. There are new opportunities for both German investors, German business people, and Kenyan opportunities also for Kenyans, Kenyan entrepreneurs, Kenyan business people to explore and to work together. We see an opportunity because we have some of the largest resources of renewable energy. Germany, on the other side, have the best technology. Combining these two opportunities from the renewable assets that we have and the German technology that exists here, with investment, we can create a win-win outcome. Not just on that, on education as well. There is need for synergy between curriculum in Kenyan technical training colleges with their German counterparts, because labor is becoming a very fluid resource. This country requires 250,000 people to work. Kenya can actually offer, because we can synergize the training, the skills, the competencies that can be made available to this country. We are looking at opportunities for sustainable agriculture. You may want to know that Kenya is actually a tech hub in the continent. We have some of the best creative, innovative human capital anywhere in the world. Again, there is opportunity there as we present Kenya as a destination and a hub for access to ACFTA, that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which comes with 1.4 billion people, an economy of $3.4 trillion, and the youngest population in the globe. A quarter of the world's population will be living in the African continent by 2050. So there is sufficient reason for Germany and Kenya to work together because the opportunities available are tremendous.
Now, I'd like to turn to the situation in Kenya at the moment, because also connected with the war, there's a cost of living crisis being experienced in many, many countries. Kenya is pretty badly hit, and people are angry. There are big protests. Police have been firing tear gas today. What are you doing to calm the situation?
We live in a context, and Kenya, by the way, is possibly the largest democracy in our region. And we had the best ever election last year. Of course, unfortunately, 6 months after the election, my competitors, let me say, decided to pick up and say that to want to challenge the election, not in a court of law, not in any known jurisdiction, but to challenge my election on the streets with demonstrations. But let me tell you that from where I sit, yes, we have a crisis of commodity high prices, whether it's fertilizer, whether it is fuel, whether it's grain. You've asked me directly, what am I doing? Number one, we have registered 5 million farmers. We are providing fertilizers and seeds for them to grow. Number two, we are importing food from across the globe, where some of the imports arrived last week. We've cleared some of them to begin to tamper the price of commodities. We are also investing long-term on irrigation, and that's part of the conversation I will be having with German officials on how we can work together to change our agriculture from being rain-fed to being agriculture under irrigation. The riots in Nairobi are not so much about the cost of living. It is so much about some election results, which is actually a settled matter. But of course, because cost of living is a pregnant issue, is a emotive issue, our competitors are trying to take advantage of it. But I think the people of Kenya are a lot wiser.
I mean, your critics have said that you have so far not been able to deliver on your promises to lower prices.
I hadn't picked up the phone. The feeling that she called me during the attack and I wasn't able to speak to her will come back and haunt me for a while. Our family of 7 is now a family of 4.
Meanwhile, a Palestinian teenager has been killed in a raid by the Israeli military in the West Bank. 15-year-old Mohammed Balhan died after sustaining gunshot wounds in an operation to apprehend Palestinians suspected of attacks against Israelis. In a statement, the country's military said soldiers engaged the suspects in response to being fired on. The Dalai Lama has apologised for an interaction with a young boy caught on video. In it, the spiritual leader kisses the child on the lips. After a few seconds, he then asks the child to suck his tongue. In a statement released on his website, the Dalai Lama's office said a video clip has been circulating that shows a recent meeting when a young boy asked His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, if he could give him a hug. His Holiness wishes to apologise to the boy and his family, as well as his many friends across the world, for the hurt his words may have caused. His Holiness often teases people he meets in an innocent and playful way, even in public and before cameras. He regrets the incident. 2 climate protesters have clashed with museum security guards after they jumped the barrier to a dinosaur